Order at 6:01 on Monday, January 10th, February 10th, 2025. Thank you all for being here. We are going to first go through the agenda. The agenda tonight is our call to order, which we just did, the agenda review, the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. We'll be hearing testimony from people who are scheduled. Then we will have a call to action item, discussion, and then we will adjourn for the evening. Committee members, in your packets are the minutes from our meeting last week. It's like a year ago, but it's only a week. They're right here where it says call to order. If you could just skim them.
I believe everyone received the packet.
You all received
Right.
those, okay?
Yeah, and don't forget the one agenda change.
Right, there's one agenda item change, which is that when you see the list of people who are giving testimonials, Lori Doherty will not be here tonight. So if you approve the minutes, then someone can say, I move to approve the minutes of the January 21st, 2025 meeting of this advisory challenge committee.
I move to approve the minutes.
Right.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Yeah. Okay, we will move on now to the testimony part of this evening. And before we do that, I just would like to say that I am very glad and have a lot of gratitude towards our library team and our school board that we have firm policy in place to navigate situations where passion lies on both sides of the table. Following the precise steps of this policy has been very helpful in navigating this challenge. And it really helps ensure that all sides are heard, all people are valued, and that the decisions that this committee makes tonight are based on rules and standards rather than, just being made in a vacuum or being made arbitrarily. So we're very lucky that we have things like that in place in our rules. All right, so I will call you by name. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. And what I'd like to do before you speak is have you just tell us what your relationship to the school district is. Okay, let's see. I think our first person, oh, it's right there. Hillary Stock. And Kyle, are you timing? Thank you. Come on.
Sure.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter where.
No.
Okay, cool. Hillary Stock, and my daughter is Araya. Okay, first off, I'd like to comment on the fact that I was not at the Zoom meeting on the 5th because I had gotten an email that day telling me about it. I have 5 kids who play sports and have music lessons and other activities, plus an 8-year-old nonverbal autistic child who's in need of me 24/7. So I wasn't able to drop everything and be there, but I did watch the next day. Second off, I'd like to say that if any one of you sat my daughter down and stated to her that you were about to read your favorite part of the book, then proceed to read about a young man who took a naked photo of a woman, which degrades the value of my daughter and any woman in my mind, and proceeded to masturbate, going on about how he loves it and thanks God for his thumbs, and if there was an award, he would get first place, I would have a problem with you. And I wouldn't feel the need for you to finish reading the book to my daughter, just like I had a problem with when my daughter brought it to my attention, stating that her teacher called it her favorite part. If I had picked this book up randomly at the library and got to that part, I would have returned it. With that said, I felt no need for me to have read the book to have a complaint as a parent. But regardless, if I had read it all the way through and just stopped at him masturbating, I would have still had a problem with the book. I'd also like to state that there was no discussion after the outline reading session, as some people like to point out, but it's good for these topics of what teens are doing should be discussed. Nothing was discussed. Thirdly, I'd like to say that I did reach out to the teacher and got no explanation or email back. So then I reached out to the principal. I reached out again to the teacher and still have never heard back. So now I'm frustrated at this point because this teacher can't even explain herself or have a conversation with me on this topic. As a parent, I would have loved to have heard from the teacher and heard her own take on why she teaches this particular book. I never asked for the book to be banned or burned. I simply stated I would have liked an opt-in or opt-out book choice before the book was assigned. Do I think this particular book should be a signed book? No, this is still my opinion. Do I care if it's on a recommended list? Not at all. I just don't see the need of it being used as part of the curriculum. My daughter is class president, honor roll student. She has started several clubs, plays varsity sports, has 2 jobs, and is a very well-rounded individual. I am proud of her for bringing this book to my attention and trusting me to stand up for what I believe is wrong. This doesn't mean that she is sheltered or unaware of what teens do. This means she is aware of what learning should look like and taking pride in her education enough to stand up. One last thing I would like to address is during the Zoom meeting, a man noted that they were offended. I didn't bring up the fact that the N-word was used. Last I checked, that is part of foul language, which I did state I had a problem with.
Don't start the timer yet.
Okay, let me know.
Um,
Can you tell the committee how-
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm so
Sorry, I gotta get my notes. Difficulties already. All right, before you start the timer, because I timed myself.
sorry.
My name's Brett Bishop. I have 3 kids in the Seaside School District. One of them's right over there. So, but I moved here in 2007, and started a family in this community. And, yeah, so we've been here for 18 years. And we've loved every minute of it, but you can start the timer.
Okay.
I just want to thank the entire committee, because I think it's awesome that you guys care enough for our children to spend your time, energy, and taking that out of your busy schedules to review the curriculum and examine our children's educational goals. I think it's awesome that we're all here because we care. So good news. I have good news for you. I have taken the committee's recommendation of reading The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian in its entirety. I also, like Hillary, want to clear up the miscommunication that I'm asking for this book to be banned, because I'm not. I'm simply asking for curriculum option. And I know I checked the box on there of I don't want it used at all. But I was kind of seeing red at the time. I'm simply asking for curriculum option free of sexually explicit content for my 14-year-old daughter, which I don't view as being unreasonable. After reviewing this book, I thought my eyes would be opened up and I would see why the passage in question was included in this story. After reading the book, I'm left even more confused as to how this passage even fits into context of this book. From my perspective, it seems like it was added for shock value in a shoddy attempt to keep the target audience's attention. After watching the last committee meeting, I think we can all agree that the portrayal of Indigenous culture and issues of identity might not be fully understood by freshman students without the sufficient context or guidance. It requires contextual discussion and preparation that might not be feasible in a typical freshman English class. It was stated in the committee meeting, referring to the material in question. It was probably read aloud, but it's just part of the chapter. Or another one was, at least teachers help guide students to real world that everyone goes through. The context and guidance my daughter received before this was read out loud in class was, "This is my favorite part to read my favorite part of the book to read out loud. Again, I think that this is a poor attempt to keep students' attention. Our teachers are well aware that this material is potentially offensive to some students and could potentially make them uncomfortable. My recommendations would be to have an option for students and parents to be informed when this content is going to be read aloud in class, and have an option to opt in or opt out of that specific portion. My daughter was offered an alternative text after we complained, called Hearts Unbroken by Cynthia Smith, which she reads. The alternative text was considerably longer, I'm almost done, than the original required reading, and led to a more arduous and lengthy self-guided assessment, which had to be completed in a shorter time frame. My suggestion for future situations would be to have clear communications between student, teachers, and parents, and have a predetermined options up front. Thank you for your time.
I'll read Anne Susie's statement. She's the teacher. So this is from Anne Susie.
You want me to time you?
Mhm.
Okay.
I can take it over. Dear Superintendent Penrock, School Board and Committee. In response to your request, here are the standards that I use for teaching the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. 9:10 reading literature 1, analyze what the text says explicitly as well as inferentially, cite strong, thorough textual evidence to support the analysis. R10 reading literature 2, determine a theme or central idea of a text and analyze in detail its development over the course of the text, including how it emerges and is shaped and refined by specific details. Provide an evidence-based summary of the text. RL3, analyze the impact of the author's choices regarding the development of complex characters over the course of a text, the interaction with other characters and or the social, cultural, historical context and the advancement of the plot or the development of the theme. RL5, analyze the impact of the author's choices concerning how to structure, develop a text, such as how to order events within it to advance the plot or theme, manipulate time, and situate within a social, cultural, and or historical context. RL6, analyze perspective, point of view, or cultural experience in works that draw on a wide range of world literature across time and location, including consideration of which perspectives are represented and which are absent. W2, which is writing, write informative, explanatory text to examine and convey complex ideas, concepts, and information clearly and accurately through the effective selection, organization, and analysis of content. W3, write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, well-chosen details, and well-structured event sequences. Writing 9, draw and cite evidence from literary or informational text to support analysis, reflection, and research. SL1, speech and language.
Yeah, speaking, listening, yeah.
Speaking and listening, initiate and participate effectively in a range of collaborative discussions, texts, and issues, building on others' ideas and expressing their own clearly and persuasively. SL1A, come to discussions prepared, having read and researched material under study, explicitly draw on that preparation by referring to evidence from texts and other research on the topic or issue to stimulate a thoughtful, well-reasoned exchange of ideas. Speech and listening 1D, respond thoughtfully to diverse perspectives, summarize points of agreement and disagreement, and when warranted, qualify or justify their own views and understanding and make new connections in light of the evidence and reasoning presented. In addition, I have felt that reading this book, discussing the Native American culture during my time on an Navajo reservation helps to fulfill the requirement of tribal curriculum that Oregon is asked to teach. As far as summative assessments, there are 3. Students do a 1-pager in which students analyze and synthesize themes from the novel, a written test assessing the standards taught, and a culture essay. In the essay, which can be done as a narrative or expository mode, students describe a cultural group they belong to. Yeah. You see? Megan Hughes.
Hello. So I am listed on the agenda as Seaside Public Library. But before I start, I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not representing the library tonight or the city, but my own personal experience going through the book review process and my experience as a parent of a child who's been assigned this book. The most important thing for me when the library was going through their review process was the precedent that we were setting. Every book can be challenged. We all have different value sets and different subjects offend us. And I know it's a little bit different for the school because you're considering whether to take it out of curriculum, not circulation, or whether it's age appropriate or not. But I think the same principle still stands. When you're looking at high school level reading material, most of the books are going to have adult themes sprinkled in. It might not be this specific adult theme, but it will be one that offends someone else. So when do you pull a book? Instead of using the current policy, which I think is to offer an alternate. And then next time, do you pull the next book? Or how many challenges do you need before you pull that book? And are you setting precedent for 9th grade English or K through 12 English or all subjects across the board? Kind of have to think of how your decision today and the policy that you follow will affect your future decisions. And then I wanted to also share my personal experience with this book and how impactful it was in my own household. And I think it also speaks to the appropriateness of the age level. So we got custody of my nephew the summer before his freshman year. And he moved states, he moved schools, households, and for the first time in his life, he was a minority in the town that he lived in. Not everyone looked like him, not everyone had the same cultural references as him. He's Mexican American and came from a town that is almost 100% Mexican American, entire area that is. And he was really struggling with fitting into that new dynamic. We were all really struggling with all the changes. And then when this book was assigned, I don't know if the homework assignments today are the same as they were 5 years ago when this happened to us, but it opened up great avenues of communication for us. The homework questions were thoughtful and insightful and made us really sit down and talk about what he was going through and how we could be there for him. And reading the book together as a family helped us understand what he was going through at the time. And I know this book isn't for everyone, but for the student who is dealing with change or loss or fighting with a best friend who may be struggling with an alcoholic parent or poverty, or really any student fighting to make a better future for themselves, this book is hope. For me, the entire theme of this book is hope. I'm so thankful that the hope made its way into our household through this curriculum. Thank you.
Next is Marion Rose, who is the youth librarian for the Seaside Public Library, and she has also submitted a letter to be read. And I might have to go through it a little bit fast. My name is Marion Rose, and I'm currently the Youth Services Librarian at Seaside Public Library. Previously, I was the librarian at Earhart Library. First, I would like to thank the committee for their time and very thoughtful work addressing the challenge of the absolute diary of part-time Indian by Sherman Alexie, with drawings by Ellen Forney. I was impressed with your discussion, and it is obvious that all of you have taken this challenge seriously. I've watched the full video of your previous meeting and thank Ms. Prater for asking me to speak, and I will focus on her question. How are books and materials chosen for the library, and why might they be problematic? I'm not sure anyone can answer this to the satisfaction of every individual. Seaside Public Library has also addressed challenges to a couple of books in recent past, resulting in our library board finding the material to be aligned with our policy and retaining the books for public use. Here's a portion of our policy to help explain. Collection development at the Seaside Public Library is founded on the principles of intellectual freedom, equal access for all, and the preservation of the documentary record of culture. The library provides a collection that balances viewpoints across a broad spectrum of opinion and subject matter in formats suitable to a variety of learning and selection practices that are flexible and responsive to the changing needs of the community. The library builds and maintains collections for the general public while recognizing the needs of special population groups. In addition, composition of the present collection, collection objectives, public interest, patron requests, and timeliness of topic, audience for material, current or historical significance of author or subject. Audience of material is a big part of my job. I purchase materials for ages 0 to young adult fiction, target audience age 12 to 18. 12 to 14 is the lower end of YA market and is often shelved in our junior fiction section, while 14 and up is shelved in the young adult area of the library. Separating these age groups can get confusing for any patron as well as professionals, and we welcome questions to help find the right material for you. I utilize many tools in selecting material for the library, including award winners, bestseller lists, peer reviews, publications, notably book list, school, library journal, and many more. Although I'm a public librarian, I'm very involved with what is recommended for schools by librarians and teachers. I am a member of the Oregon Association of School Libraries, Oregon Children's Services Division, Oregon Young Adult Network, and the Oregon Library Association. All of these avenues and many more help me develop a broad collection to meet the library needs of our community. I've worked and volunteered in public and school libraries for over 30 years, and parents have always had concerns for their children's reading and their preferences, including myself. This is part of the difficult work of being a parent, but I'm always happy to see them engaged with their child's reading. We'll just leave it there. Thank you, Marion. Mark Mizell.
Well, I taught here for 34 years and a great time teaching mostly freshmen during that time. And I guess I'm the one to blame for originally introducing this. Let me backtrack a little bit. Our daughter Lindsay is a voracious reader, and we threw stuff at her, everything, even stuff with naughty words in it, and she just absorbed it. And now she's a parent, she's having her kids read everything probably. That said, I think that it's important that the students opt out if they feel like piece of writing was contrary to their moral code. But anyway, the way I got turned on to Sherman Alexie is he came to my classroom one time. He was plugging a book called The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven. And he shared a story from that book. It was called Because My Father Was the Only Indian Who Heard Jimi Hendrix play the Star Spangled Banner at Woodstock. That was the title. And I used that story. I shared that story with kids from then on. And then in 2007, I read that his book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, had been given the National Book Award. And so I was curious about it. I checked. Actually, I went and bought a copy of it. I read it, and shortly after I started, this was grabbing my great attention. The voice is so fresh, and there's humor. And after I finished it, I asked the powers that be if I could use it in my classroom. I got the okay on it. There's a sacred writing rule among English teachers: show, don't tell. And this book does such a great job of that. Between the writing and the wonderful illustrations, you just really get some lasting memories of the Reds. And a lot of people haven't been exposed to that. And the narrator, the narrator is a kid the same age as ninth graders, so that's powerful. And Through Junior's infectious voice, we really get a picture of the poverty and the alcoholism in Brad. And he doesn't pull any punches. I mean, several of the characters die, all alcohol related problems. But ultimately, it's a positive book. And when I came to the end of it, I thought, man, it'd be nice if we could see more of it. But anyway, one of the biggest problems I had with the book is getting students to not read further than they're supposed to read. That's a happy problem. It's a tough thing to find a book that has some substance that students want to read. I'm proud to be have been part of this school. Very professional. Appreciate even people that have spoken the book.
Alice is next.
I was a language arts teacher at the high school and the middle school for many years and the librarian for a very short period of time. And personally, if you want my personal opinion, I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I read the book last night, and the passage that everybody's talking about, I felt it was anecdotal to the story. If I had been his editor, I probably would have said, is it really necessary? Because it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the story. That being said, the story itself is a 14-year-old boy. I've never been a 14-year-old boy. I can't speak to that. In my experience of teaching, if someone had a problem with a book, then yes, something else should be made available that is the same level, addresses the same standards, is the same reading level, and approximately the same length. I don't know that, quite honestly, that passage that everybody's talking about with the M word comes at the very beginning and then doesn't have anything else to do with the rest of the story. So as a librarian, if you read the ALA guidelines, it pretty much is kind of what Marion said, that you have every right in the world to not want your child to read something, and if something else is equally presented that addresses the same standards and can help the student learn the same things and the same grade is available for them, then it is traditionally not a problem. So that's pretty much my take on it.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, thank you for sharing your testimony tonight. The committee now, we're at the part of the agenda where it's an action item. And so I think that you might have in front of you the 3 choices that are in our board policy. And so you can take a moment to read through them, because we will, somebody will make a motion and then. So for those of you listening, their 3 choices are that they recommend the continued use of the book as used with no reservations. They may recommend the modified use of the book, and then we will be specific about what that modification is. Or they may move, to recommend no further use of this book. So just one of you needs to make a motion.
I move that this committee recommend the continued use of the book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian as used with no reservations.
Seconded.
Okay. Now it is time for discussion amongst this group of people. And I'll just remind you that our norms, will follow the same norms. We, are here to discuss the book, not people, et cetera, et cetera. So you've heard testimony from both sides. And again, I thank you. I liked how Mark said how professional we are and how civil we are. So I really appreciated everybody's comments. And I open it up for discussion. And if there's nothing more to discuss, we can take a vote right now.
Kate, I have a question.
Yes, Alice.
I understand the motion, but is there anything involved in that motion, or is it just understood that alternative materials would be made available?
Everybody's understood that alternative materials are made available, and that's not actually what the challenge request is about. We're sticking straight to the challenge request. But yes, it's always understood in this district that alternative material should be made available, that students are able to not read a section that they don't want to read. But again, Alice, that's not what is before us as a committee.
Okay, thank you.
I would, I guess, as far as the discussion goes, just kind of reiterate what you just said. The request was to withdraw in both cases, to withdraw the book from use. And I want to highlight that as something that was factored into our decision-making and conversation.
Be allowed to be a part of this discussion?
Not really, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry I answered Alice's question. We're not really.
Can I will add as part of our discussion, though, I just want to reiterate again that, as the high school and middle school English departments, we have no problem making it clear on the syllabi and other things that there is an opt-out option for books. There, you know, our works are listed in the syllabus, which usually gets signed by parents. But I'm gonna look at drafting more of a more detailed, like, here's what's going on kind of situation for syllabi, the parents see it, also it's at home to parents as well.
When you said it's like, there's an option, but I was never presented with that. My child was never presented with that. Like, you say it's clear, but it's not.
Those discussions do happen in class. They're not necessarily always.
Like,
put
she
out
didn't
for
have a
everybody.
choice whether she wanted to get it read to her aloud or not.
So, Brett, let me say this, that's a different discussion than what we're gonna be voting on tonight, and I will circle back to you and Joanna about that. I appreciate what you're saying. We've had some thoughtful discussions surrounding that, and I think that I can come to a place where you'll feel better about my discussions with Superintendent Penrod about that, but for tonight, that's not on the table.
Cool.
So then, it sounds like. Go ahead, Sis.
I guess that makes, I didn't have that, I think in my voting, if there's going to maybe be some clarity and like something on the syllabus or a conversation prior to that portion, that it's a sensitive topic and that students could be aware of that. But,
I don't think there's anything wrong with more communication.
yeah,
We can absolutely do better with that, and I have no issue with that.
but if it's a sensitive, if that part's a sensitive topic, and, you know, it's been stated, it doesn't necessarily impact the other parts, so the student could miss that part, that's part they're not comfortable with beforehand, and then come back, you know, that would make a difference, knowing that would be happening.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, the, you know, the concerns that have been raised around this book and around, what's happening in real time in our classrooms are completely valid, concerns of parents and, yeah. It's more communication. There's never a problem with that.
So as a parent, if my freshman who's coming in next year, doesn't want to read this book or doesn't feel comfortable reading this book, she will be allowed an option.
Yes.
As a teacher from the department, anytime we've come to a section of the book that I felt was questionable or was uncomfortable or could put any student kind of on their heels, I always preemptively say, you can walk out at any time. You are allowed to skip this section of the book. And as a department, I feel we're pretty clear with students. I'm not sure what happened in this situation, but I do know in my experience, whenever I have a book that has sections, I've always given students alternate material or an option to skip that and come back, which I think is somewhat standard. But again, I don't know what happened in this situation. I'm just saying as a whole, that's what we try to do, especially knowing that we have students that have different needs and come from different backgrounds, and everyone views different things differently. We try to be very respectful of that.
Well, I mean, I think communication is really important, and I mean, I don't want to see we.
I think we had a great discussion last week. I personally, related a lot to Junior. There's a lot of experiences that he went through his freshman year that I also resonate with. And also as a parent with my kids, every parent's journey as a parent is different. Every kid is different. With my kids, I had to discuss very adult things with them very early on because of how we became a family. And out of respect and love for them, I'm not going to bring up a lot of their stuff they went through, but I think it is important that we do have material available to not only parents, but to students that can discuss more adult-esque kind of themes to make them more aware of it, so they're not ignorant of it, that they're not putting themselves in a situation that they don't know what things are. Again, as I said in our meeting last week, a lot of what Junior focuses on is trying to find his place in the world, between two worlds. And that's what I really focused on and resonated with the story, was being a young man at 14 years old, going to a new school, growing up desperately poor, talking about how there'd be nights he wouldn't have dinner, the alcoholism, those kinds of things. That's what really I focused on.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's also kind of shaping my view on my vote, which is, and again, going off of the forms that were submitted, which we're asking to have them removed, I'm voting to keep the book in place.
Okay, I'm gonna take a roll call vote then. The motion's been made to recommend to the board the continued use of the book, Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, as used with no reservations. So when I call your name, please just say yay or nay. Susan?
Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah.
Jane? Anthony?
Yay.
Daphne,
Yay.
Laura,
Yay.
and Susie.
Hmm.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeas and 0 nays. So the motion passes. Which brings us to adjournment. And again, I'd like to thank everybody here for being very thoughtful and very concerned and very caring about our students. I hope that people who brought their testimony forth, as well as people who challenged the material, I hope that you understand how brave you are to speak up in a public space for your children. And I hope that this process, by following board policy, has given you a measure of feeling that your voice is heard, and that we care about all people in this district. I hope that has come through.
I got my name in the Oregonian.
Was I, yeah, you were quoted? Or you were,
I wasn't quoted, they just put my name.
yeah,
Basically famous.
yeah.
pretty
And
much.
Brett,
Pretty good.
I will, let me just say, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Brett, I will circle back to you, okay?
Right now.